Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So my next interview is with, I'm going to call him eco-activist Paul Watson, who was the co-founder of Greenpeace, but I think more importantly, the founder of Sea Shepherd. And we talked about, well, once again, one of those conversations that I think that could have gone on for quite a while. We talked about something called aggressive nonviolence and why he was so frustrated with protesting and what led to the eventual creation of this thing called Sea Shepherd, and how he's created a movement in the thing that he's most proud of. We talk about Sun Tzu and the art of war, and we talk about death and how it was a real motivator for him. Actually, overcoming his fear of death was the motivator. We talk about the three sort of laws of ecology: diversity, interdependence, and the law of finite resources. And we talk about the environment, of course, and climatology, and how it's all connected to well, as Paul says, this courage to commit. That's how you too can make a passionate difference. And he really truly does, after all these years, still believe that even though the system is against you, as Paul will say, he believes that every one of us can and in fact make a difference. He talks about why Gandhi didn't help in this life-changing moment for him, where he looked a whale in the eye and he understood. He felt understood, and this was one of those moments that led to him doing the work that he went on to do. You've got to see this film, Watson. It's in the theaters. It's going to be online. If it's not already, by the time you hear this, it will be very soon. Check it out, Watson. It's a brilliant film. It's gorgeous. It's stunning to look at. Leslie Chilcott directed it. The images that she has of wildlife and the world that we live in are remarkable, and kind of juxtapose over and against Paul and his life and just the commitment that he had to push back against truth, speak truth to power, and push back against the status quo, and really make a difference. Paul's a fascinating guy, and it really comes out, I think, in our conversation a little bit, and I hope it drives you to the film as well. And it's, can you tell that I had, not only did I have a great time chatting with Paul, but really enjoyed the film as well. It's thoughtful. It's marvelous. It really is delightful on so many levels. And it's a real challenge and an affirmation of being human and why, sometimes stepping in and intervening is the only way. So check it out online. Check out Sea Shepherd, and don't forget to check out davidpecklive.com as well for info there about my speaking and writing. You can purchase a copy of Real Changes Incremental. And face-to-face-live.ca, there's some website changes occurring as we speak, and something new coming. And look there to see about 535 interviews now published. You're probably coming to this interview through iTunes or Spotify, Amazon, one of the key players. But check face-to-face-live.ca out, and please social mediate us, share it with family and friends. Get on our email list, get on the newsletter, and don't forget you can advertise with us as well if you're really interested. Reach out there, and we'll look forward to our next conversation. But right now, stay tuned. Don't touch that. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot. Please, if you enjoy what you're listening to, if you like what we're doing, please leave us a review. It's so important. An iTunes review, a Spotify review would mean the world to me, and would honestly, the little things make a difference. A like on YouTube, stepping in, and socially mediating us would make all the difference. It really would. So stay tuned though now for Paul Watson, and chatting about a whole lot of things, and his new film directed by Leslie Chilcott, Watson, coming right up. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by a very special guest here with us today. We have Paul Watson here, the subject of a new film coming out actually, I think it's out already in some parts of the world, Watson, directed by Leslie Chilcott. Paul, what a pleasure to have you on Face to Face today. Thanks for taking the time.
Well, thank you.
So Paul, I mean, I think one of the things that boggled my mind, and by the way, can I say congratulations on the film? I guess it's sort of your film, isn't it? Or it's a film about you.
Well,
Can I,
it is about me.
can I say congratulations? Are you feeling good about the film? I'm assuming you've seen it.
Yeah, I think she did a good job.
Yeah, yeah, I think it was wonderful, and I'm recommending it. I've recommended it already to a few people. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a game changer for a lot of people. I really do, and the splash and ripple effect. It can be pretty profound, and it's really remarkable what can change course for people. And I mean, I think what boggled my mind, Paul, about you and your history is that there's just so much of it.
Yeah, it appears to be.
It appears to be. So like, where do we start? Like, honestly, I mean, do we even talk about Greenpeace? Do we just talk about what's happening today in the world? But it's really quite remarkable where you've been. And I love how Leslie frames you. I think it's early in the film, and you're going through your files. You clearly are a note taker, as a somebody who's done captain's logs for many years. You're a man of detail.
Well, not as much as I should be, but
Oh, is that right? Is that not played out so well for you in the past?
oh no, it's just that I do the best I can, but time overwhelms us.
Those logbooks that we actually get to see with the images and the drawings and so on. I mean, they look like works of art.
Well, I think so, yeah, because I look on them as historical documents
Mm.
and archive them to really document all of the voyages that we've done over the last 42 years.
It's and could you come up with a number of how many you've done?
Actually, no, I don't. It's in the hundreds, really.
It would be in the
I can't
hundreds.
even keep track anymore. We have 12 ships out there right now, and
It's
it's hard to keep track of all
it's
of their movements all at any given time.
It's just really quite remarkable. So tell you what, why don't you give us some context about Sea Shepherd? Happy to listen, to whatever you have to say about the film as well, and definitely want to hear more about the Bridget Bardot file.
I established Sea Shepherd in 1977 as an interventionist organization. I left Greenpeace because I just felt frustrated with protesting,
Mm.
hanging banners and taking pictures, and nothing changed. So with Sea Shepherd, we became an anti-poaching organization. We concentrated on illegal activities. And I developed a strategy which I called then aggressive nonviolence. In
Mm.
other words, we're going to be aggressive, but we're not going to hurt anybody. And in the last 42 years, we've not caused a single injury to a single person or sustained any serious injuries, but we have shut down hundreds of illegal activities.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this idea? You're frustrated with protesting. I watched a film. I'm not sure if you've heard of the name David Suzuki, but you're from Toronto, so you probably know David.
Well, I
Uh,
knew David personally, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I just interviewed him recently, and he said he felt as if we as environmentalists had failed. And I'm just interested because I've read about you that you're an interventionist. You're not a protester per se, and so you say you got frustrated with it. Can you unpack that a little bit for our listeners?
Well, protesting is very submissive. It's like, please,
Hmm.
please don't kill the whales, but they do it anyway, and we just document it and bear witness, whatever that is. And nothing changes. The other problem with protesting is that, especially with civil disobedience, is that young people, especially, get involved with it and they end up getting a criminal record. And that certainly affects their ability to do anything later in life. The system has it down that if you rebel and you
Mm.
rebel in that way using civil disobedience, well, they have ways of dealing with you. What I've managed to do over the last 42 years is to not get a criminal record uh, and to get things done. And so I think this approach works.
So tell me, in the film it comes out, and I've interviewed Rob Stewart as well, twice actually, in fact, and I'm a big fan. My daughter's life was kind of changed as a result of images from Sharkwater. He appears in the film very briefly, and how, that looked like you should have wound up in jail over that, and you pretty much almost did, right? And it was in the courts for years. This Costa Rican, what would you even call it? Accusation, I guess, a challenge, but you managed to beat it.
It was political. It wasn't judicial.
Mm.
And the reason being is that particular incident took place in Guatemalan waters. We intervened
Mm.
against an illegal activity at the request of the Guatemalan government. Now, the fishermen put in a complaint to Costa Rica, and I was charged with 8 counts of attempted homicide. But I wasn't too concerned because Rob Stewart had it all on film, and we went into court in Costa Rica. They looked at it and dropped the charges. A week later, they then came back and charged me with 8 counts of assault. Well, we went back into court, and they showed the film, and they had to drop the charges. And I was given clearance to leave the country, which I did. And I never heard anything for the next 10 years until I landed in Germany in 2012, and there was an extradition request by Costa Rica to Germany to extradite me, which came out of left field. And now the charge was shipwreck endangerment, whatever that was.
Right. Well, if you don't know, I sure don't.
And so that all came about because of a meeting between the president of Costa Rica and the prime minister of Japan in December of 2011. So really, Japan was using Costa Rica because they're a big, they provided a lot of foreign aid. So they were using them to come after me. So when I got held in Germany for 2 months under house arrest on this extradition request, during that time, Japan filed with Germany for an extradition request. Now, I wasn't on the Interpol red list, but in late July of 2012, I get a call from a supporter within the Ministry of Justice in Germany who said, when you come in to report, because I had to report every day to the police station, when you come in to report, you're going to be arrested and sent extradited to Japan. And I said to myself, well, no, I'm not. I left the country. And so I managed I didn't have any papers or anything, but I managed to cross the Atlantic, cross North America, across the Pacific, and rejoin my ship. It took me a couple of months to do it. But then what happened is that because I left Germany, then Japan and Costa Rica were able to get me onto the Interpol Red Notice list.
Right.
Now, the Interpol Red Notice list is for serial killers, major drug traffickers, and war criminals. And I'm the only person in the history of that list to be put on there for conspiracy to trespass.
Is that right?
Didn't hurt anybody, didn't steal anything, didn't damage any property, but that's why I was on there. Now, last year, Costa Rica dismissed the charges and dropped me from that Interpol Red Notice. Why? Because of a change of government. New government, they took a look at it and said, this is ridiculous. And so if it was judicial, they wouldn't have been able to do that. So now it's only Japan that has me on that red notice, and they don't really want me. They just don't want me to travel because
just stay out of our water.
They know I'm in the United States, but they haven't filed for extradition. The only place I can go to France if I want, but the only place I can't go is my own home country of Canada, because Canada has made it quite clear that they will extradite me to Japan if I, as a Canadian,
is that right?
They'll extradite me there to Japan if I venture across that border.
So early on in the film, and I think when you were quite a bit younger, I'd love to hear sort of, why you, Paul? Like why do you care? I've interviewed people who are trying to change the world on a variety of levels, and I would argue you've done that in spades, as it were. Why this and not something else? How come you didn't went up in a university or join the military? And I'm fascinated by your commitment and passion. The shot of you on top of the dead whale just says it all.
Well, I did do a lot of those things. I was Canadian Coast Guard. I was with the Norwegian and the Swedish Merchant Marine. I was a medic for the American Indian Movement during the occupation of Wounded Knee in 1973. I did go to university. I majored in communications. So I did all those things. Mm-hmm. But there's 2 incidents that really changed my life. One when I was 10, and I spent the summer swimming with a family of beavers. And I went back the next summer. They were gone, found out trappers had killed them all. And that made me quite angry. So that winter, I began to walk trap lines and destroy the traps and free the animals. And then in 1969, at 18, I was the youngest founding member of Greenpeace. But in 1975, we came up with this idea to protect the whales by putting our bodies between the harpoon and the whales. We were, reading a lot of Gandhi at the time, and that thought that was the approach. And Bob Hunter and I were in a small boat and blocking the harpoon. That worked for about 20 minutes until the captain of the Soviet vessel came down the catwalk and screamed into the ear of the harpooner and looked down at us and smiled and brought his finger across his throat. And that's when I realized Gandhi wasn't going to work. And the harpoon flew over her head, slammed into the backside of one of the whales in the pod. She screamed and rolled on her side. There's blood everywhere. And the largest whale in that pod slapped the water with his tail and disappeared and swam right underneath of us and threw himself at the bow of the Soviet vessel. But they were waiting for him. They had a harpoon ready to go, unattached, but they hit him point blank in the head, and he fell back in the water, rolling in agony, blood everywhere on the surface. And it was only about 100 meters away. And suddenly, I caught his eye. And that whale turned, and I saw a trail of bloody bubbles coming real fast. And he came up and out of the water at an angle so that the next move would have come right down on top of us and crush us. And as his head rose out of the water, and his eye was right there in front of my face, an eye the size of my fist that so close I could see my own reflection in that eye.
Wow.
What I saw there changed my life forever, because I felt understanding. The whale understood what we were trying to do. And instead of coming forward and crushing us, I could see the effort he made to pull himself back and to slide back into the sea as I disappeared beneath the surface, and he died. Could have killed me. Chose not to do so. So I feel indebted to that life for the fact that I survived. But later, sitting in the middle of the Soviet whaling fleet as the sun was going down, and I said to myself, why are we killing these whales? And they didn't use it for food to eat. It was for oils, very highly prized, highly heat-resistant oil. And one of the major uses, the most valuable use, was for the construction of intercontinental ballistic missiles. And I said to myself, here we are killing this incredibly beautiful, intelligent, complex, self-aware, sentient being for the purpose of making a weapon meant for the mass extermination of human beings. And then it just hit me. We are insane. And from that moment on, I said, I ain't doing this for people. I'm doing it for them. Those are my clients, the whales, the sharks. So in 1986, after we sank half of Iceland's whaling fleet, I had a former colleague from Greenpeace call me up, and he said, just want to let you know that what you did in Iceland was reprehensible and unforgivable, and you're an embarrassment to the movement. And I said, yeah, so? He said, well, I thought you would not know what we think about that. And I said, I don't really care. We didn't sink those ships for you or Greenpeace or any other human being. Find me a whale that disagreed with what we did, and we won't do it.
Right. Don't you say in the film, Paul, or at least Leslie edited this in, that Gandhi wasn't going to help us that day, but you were indebted to the whale because there was this. Well, you've already talked about it. You saw your reflection in the eye. There was a moment you connected in some way that I think if most of us experienced that, we would connect, I think. But what then Sea Shepherd and your life and so on might not follow necessarily. Does that make sense? You go on a holiday, you have this life-changing experience, you come back home and you get back into the 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, you've forgotten about the whales, etc. That's the passionate commitment that I so admire and saw in the film.
Well, there's other factors too. The fact that shortly thereafter, in 77, I left Greenpeace and set up Sea Shepherd. One of the reasons I left Greenpeace is I was a campaign leader for the expedition to protect seals on the east coast of Canada. And the bureaucracy of Greenpeace by that time was undermining my effort. I just couldn't deal with that. I had all these plans and strategies, and they just said, no, we can't do that. It's too controversial. The reason that they said that I was voted off the board, I actually wasn't thrown out of Greenpeace. I was voted off the board was because they said what I did was violent. Well, what I did was walk up to a sealer, grab his club out of his hand, and throw it in the water. And as I said at that board meeting, I said my job was to save the lives of seals and to not hurt anybody, and that's exactly what I did. So if you have a problem with that, then I don't think that this is my place to remain with this organization. I can't deal with this bearing witness and doing nothing. You don't walk down the street and see a woman being raped and take pictures and hang banners. You don't watch a dog being kicked to death and take pictures and hang banners, and you don't stand there and watch a whale die and do nothing.
You intervene. I'm reminded of an essay. I don't know if I can get it pull it out of off the top of my head right now. But Peter Singer wrote an essay in the 70s, the philosopher and ethicist, about if you're walking by a pond and you're in a fancy suit and you see children drowning, you're going to step in, you're going to save them, and then went on to argue sort of for international development and supporting children, etc. And it's a very classic essay, and I can't pull it out off the top of my head. But it's so important to reason that way through analogy, right? To make it relatable for folks like me who aren't going to be out on that ship. Is that kind of what Sea Shepherd is all about? Obviously, they're about actually intervening and changing the way things are happening. But is it about what's the word I'm looking for here? not protest, advocacy, I guess, or is that a word that you're not
Well, yeah,
a big fan of?
yes, so. But what I started as an organization today has evolved into something which I'm most proud of, and it's a movement,
Mm,
international movement. We're in 42 different countries. They're all separate entities cooperating to operate those ships and do campaigns. And so Sea Shepherd's far bigger than me now.
mm,
I'm, because I found in 2012 when the Japanese came after me personally and after Sea Shepherd in the U.S. through the U.S. court system, that, yeah, you can stop an individual and you can shut down an organization, but a movement, you can't stop that. And so that's our strength.
Can you talk a little bit about the three laws of ecology? Is it diversity, interdependence, and finite resources? You talk about that as if this is where you didn't get it from Gandhi necessarily, but it's rooted in some sort of ethical foundation.
Well, no species has survived on this planet outside of those three basic laws of ecology. The law of diversity, that the strength of an ecosystem is dependent upon diversity. The law of interdependence, all species within an ecosystem are interdependent with each other. And the law of finite resources. There's a limit to growth because there's a limit to resources. And when one species, say humans, take too much, then that means that that's going to affect both diversity and interdependence, and they're going to have to disappear in order to make room for our greed and our numbers. So, at this rate, we're not, the big problem, the real big problem is this viewpoint that humanity has of anthropocentrism, that
Mm.
we are Lord and Master and the most important and intelligent and wonderful creature on the planet, and everything else doesn't matter. The fact is we don't live here without these other species. A few years ago, Brett Hume from the Fox Network called me up out of the blue and he said, did you actually say that bees, trees, and worms are more important than people? I said, yeah, I did say that. He said, well, how can you say something so outrageous? I said, well, I said it because bees, trees, and worms are more important than people for the very simple fact that they can live here without us, but we can't live here without them. We need them. They don't need us. That makes them more important. This planet is really run by a crew of species that keep everything running. If you look at the Earth as a spaceship, which is what it is, where every spaceship has a life support system, and that life support system provides the air we breathe, the food we eat, and regulates climate and temperature, and that life support system is run by a crew. We humans, we're passengers. We're having a wonderful time entertaining ourselves, but what we are doing is killing off crew members. And there's only so many crew members you can kill before the machinery begins to break down and things begin to fall apart. And that is what we're seeing right now with climate change, with tsunami transmission of viruses, destruction of ecosystems, destruction of resources. We are destroying the very life support system that maintains us. And because we're within this anthropocentric bubble, we don't even see it. We don't understand that if phytoplankton in the world's ocean disappears, we die. No, we don't live on this planet without phytoplankton. It provides 70% of the oxygen that we breathe. We don't live on this planet without the bacteria in the soil and the viruses that protect us, and what we are doing right now, and we're seeing it quite evidently, is that when you diminish ecosystems and you diminish species, you create a situation where viruses associated with those other species need somewhere to go. And then those species closest to us, bats or primates, those viruses are going to jump. They're going to jump onto us. Now, a virus doesn't want to kill the host, but in the meantime, there's a lot of hosts die while it's trying to maintain a coexistence with it.
Mm.
So, viruses are associated with every plant and animal, and they're very beneficial. But when you upset the system, then that's when you have problems.
You say you overcame death playing a game as a kid, and it seemed to me that was a significant part of why you were able to do what you do. I think of the shot of you being, I think it's you being black and white sort of maybe footage of you being pulled up the side of a ship, hanging onto a net, and getting dunked over and over. I just thought, at what point, Paul, do you say, "Geez, I wish I'd stayed in the classroom"?
Never. Those things have never really bothered me. I've taken risks all my life. Hell, I'm turned 70 next month, and
right. But it comes down to, I mean, I think this idea, this overcoming this fear of death is really interesting and fascinating and important.
It's absolute freedom. If you're not afraid of dying, you're not afraid of public speaking. You're not afraid of taking action. You're not afraid of doing anything. So it really gives you, it's a lack of fear, because the fear of death is the ultimate fear. So, that has stood me in good stead, really.
Yeah.
And that. It's acceptance, and even if you read the books of Sun Tzu, in The Art of War, he said where Sun Tzu actually says that the primary attribute of a warrior is a resolute acceptance of death.
Hmm.
We're all going to die at some point. We're all going to die. Does it really matter when? It really matters how you live, not nothing else really.
How, I've got so many questions, so many notes, and I'd love to know. Just get a little personal here. How do you rest? How do you rejuvenate? How do you recharge, if you will? Do you play chess? Do you love film? What is it that you do?
Well, I write a lot of poetry, I guess, writing and that, but I don't really need to. I learned a lesson many years ago when I was at Wounded Knee and as a volunteer medic. We were surrounded by 3,000 federal agents shooting at us. Wow. Wounded 46, they killed 2. And I went to Russell Means, who was the leader of the American Indian movement, and I said, look, the odds are against us. There's no hope of us winning this. Why are we here? And what he's told me has stayed with me for the rest of my life. And to this day, he said, look, we're not concerned about the odds, and we're not concerned about winning or losing. We're here because it's the right thing to do, the right time to do it, and the right place to do it. And he said, don't worry about the future. Focus on the present. What we do in the present will define the future. And that's what we do. We don't worry about the future. We focus on the present. What we try to do is find an impossible answer to impossible problems. And I believe that can be done. In 1972, the very idea that Nelson Mandela would become president of South Africa was unthinkable and therefore impossible, and yet it happened. And I think that all problems can be solved in that way, by seeking the impossible solution. And you do that by harnessing your passion to courage and imagination and giving it all you got.
Yeah, you talk about the courage to commit in the film.
Yeah.
Being passionately. Do you think that capitalism, that politics is bankrupt when it comes to empathy? I mean, is that the key factor for the world to stand up and take notice?
Politics can't solve the problems. Never has, never will. Governments cause problems. They don't solve them. Slavery, it wasn't ended by Abraham Lincoln. It was ended by the passion of Wilberforce and Douglass. Women who got the vote in, it was because of the courage and passion of the suffragettes. I mean, Woodrow Wilson gets credit because he signed the bill, but he was their number one opponent until they actually had to sign the bill. So I can't think of anything where governments have actually really accomplished anything. The problem with politicians is that it's not that they might not want to do it. It's the problem is they can't do it. Justin Trudeau was the darling of the COP21 in Paris because he said all the right things, but he hasn't done any of them. Because they know that if they do, they're going to make the corporations angry. They're going to lose their support because people want change, but they don't want to change.
Right.
So we can come up with solutions, but they're just not going to accept those solutions. The meat industry killing 65 billion animals a year is the leading cause of greenhouse gases, the leading cause of dead zones in the ocean, the leading cause of groundwater pollution. But we know what the solution is a plant-based diet. But, I don't know. I like my steak, that kind of thing. People agree with it, but hey, don't take my hamburger, that kind of thing. So it's difficult because human beings, well, I always describe us a bunch of overly conceited naked apes who are divine legends.
Sounds like a bumper. This sounds like a bumper sticker, Paul.
We don't care.
Right.
We have no vision, and we have this incredible ability to adapt to diminishment and accept it. If things become diminished, we just move on to the next species to exploit or the next ecosystem to destroy.
So, David Suzuki talked about, I asked him about how he stays hopeful, how he gets out of bed in the morning after, 41 years of the nature of things and not seeing a lot of change and actually admitting that he felt that the environmentalist movement had failed. And he talked about a balance, I think, small b, between anger and hope. I mean, do you find something similar, or are you just kind of always angry, but still able to, have a bit of a sense of humor about it?
Well, I don't. I'm actually not an angry person, and I don't have or not have hope, really. Like I said, I focus on the present, and that will define what the future will be. I don't get angry. Actually quite calm in all of these situations. That's the only way you can survive in a confrontation situation, is you have to be able to be calm about it. When I'm in a position where I'm in an encounter with a whaling ship or everything like that, I'm not angry at them. I'm just trying to find ways to stop them from doing what they're doing. I mean, David Suzuki is an incredible educator. And, he's seen a lot. But one of the things that he does focus on, which I certainly agree with, is that we can learn a lot of lessons from indigenous cultures. Learn a way to go back to the biocentric point of view, to understand that we're part of everything and not dominant over everything. And so with Sea Shepherd, we're quite proud of the fact that we're allied with the Maori and the Aboriginals and with many native tribes. We're the only ships that are allowed to fly, given permission to fly the flag of the Five Nations, which was presented to us by the Mohawks. And they said, when they gave it to us, is that, you don't make any decision in your life until you take into the account the consequences in all future generations. So they could see that we were looking at the big picture.
So listen, we sadly have to wrap it up. I think I could chat to you all day. I was so many places we could go, and I don't want to be accused of reductionism here. But what can folks like me do? What people who aren't going to be getting on, the Sea Shepherd in the near future, or one of your 12 vessels?
Well, very simple. Everybody needs to just focus on what their abilities and are, and harness that to their passion, and harness their passion to courage and imagination. And each and every one of us can change the world. And it doesn't really matter what your approach is. It could be litigation, it could be education, it could be legislation, it could be direct action, or whatever. It doesn't matter as long as you focus on making this a better world, because one person can make a difference. Because of Diane Fossey, we have mountain gorillas in Rwanda. Because of David Wingate, this Bermuda storm petrel did not go extinct. Look what Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old girl, has been able to accomplish, and dressing down world leaders on these issues. We all have that ability. So I always say to young people, don't be deterred by criticism. Follow your passion.
Nice.
Do what you can with your abilities, and go for it. And, because young people have an intuitive understanding of what the problem is. And unfortunately, our educational system tends to beat that out of us.
Right.
And to discourage intuition and imagination.
It's affirming, it's encouraging, and it's a serious challenge. I appreciate it, and appreciate the time, Paul. It's been a pleasure chatting with you here on Face to Face. Thanks for your time. And looking for. Is there a book coming out of the film? Do you know, or what might be next?
Well, I have quite a few books, and actually, there's a motion picture that's being made by Jacques Ferrand, who made Oceans. But I'm writing a lot of books, really. My latest Wikipedia about our treatment of orcas in captivity, and that's out now. That was just released. And also, I wrote a book on climate change, but it's only available in the French language out of France.
Interesting. Well, where can people find out more? A Sea Shepherd, obviously, website. There's a Toronto chapter. There's a French chapter. There's many, actually, right? So people can just search that and learn a little bit more about what's going on. Yeah,
seashepherd.org. And we have all the social network sites, of course. We also have Sea Shepherd in London and Vancouver and Halifax and Montreal.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining me today, Paul. Really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.